Hi, my name is Tate Gresham, and I am a part of Team 47. Recently, my teammates and I had the opportunity to study the hypothetical engineering ethics case of Gilbane Gold, and I would like to share with you our thoughts. Let's begin by setting the stage. In the fictional city of Gilbane, treated wastewater is repurposed into a fertilizer called Gilbane Gold, which is then sold to farmers in the area. This fertilizer is an important source of revenue for the city and helps reduce taxes for local residents. To protect the safety of this fertilizer, the city passed environmental regulations that are 10 times stricter than the federal standards when it comes to heavy metals like lead and arsenic. Z Corp, a high-tech manufacturer that recently relocated to Gilbane, was drawn in by the tax incentives. Their production generates small quantities of toxic waste, which is discharged into the city's sewage system. Now, here's where things get complicated. Z Corp uses an older, still legally accepted testing method to analyze its wastewater, and according to that method, their discharge is compliant. But internally, they've started using a newer, more sensitive test, and that test is showing that their discharge occasionally exceeds the city's limits. So, on paper, Z Corp is in the clear. But in reality, they are potentially contaminating the sewage sludge that becomes fertilizer. And this fertilizer is applied to food crops, creating an indirect pathway for heavy metals to reach the food supply. This raises the central question of this case. Is legal compliance enough if the safety of the public may still be at risk? David Jackson, a junior environmental engineer at Z Corp, is a registered professional engineer. So when he signs off on the plant's discharge reports each month, his signature carries legal and ethical weight. The report he signs says that Z Corp is complying with the city's standards, but David knows that the newer tests tell a different story, and yet those results aren't being disclosed to the city. This puts David in a moral and professional dilemma. By continuing to sign the reports, is he protecting the company or misleading city officials and the public? Under the NSPE Code of Ethics, several violations come into play. Canon 1.1 states that engineers must hold paramount to safety, health, and welfare of the public. Canon 1.5 says to avoid deceptive acts. And Rule 2.1c specifies that engineers shall not withhold information relevant to public safety, even though the new test is not required by law. Its results are critically relevant. Signing the reports without full disclosure arguably constitutes passive deception. David isn't lying, but he's allowing the truth to remain hidden. And that compromises the integrity expected of professional engineers. This highlights one of the most common and dangerous traps in engineering ethics: the idea that silence is neutral. In fact, silence in the face of known harm can be deeply unethical. After trying to raise his concerns internally and being ignored, David learns that Z Corp has signed a contract that will drastically increase production, resulting in a 5-fold increase in toxic discharge. At this point, David feels concerned. He has already been put in an unfair position. And if he keeps signing off on reports he knows are misleading, he risks violating his ethical obligations and possibly even facing legal consequences. On the other hand, if he challenges management too aggressively he might lose his job or possibly even be blackballed in the industry. His boss is not even an engineer and doesn't seem to appreciate the professional liability that David faces. Feeling trapped and with no clear path forward, David decides to blow the whistle. He speaks to a local TV reporter and reveals that the plant may be violating safety standards using newer, more accurate testing methods. This action shines a light on the issue, but it comes at a cost. It damages the relationship between Z Corp and the city, and it puts David's career in jeopardy. And it turns what could have been a collaborative solution into a public scandal. While whistleblowing can be an important act of ethical resistance, it is usually seen as a last resort. Could David have taken another route? Could Z Corp have prevented this situation by listening sooner? We do not know. What becomes clear as we dig deeper into this case is that David was not alone in his failure. And in fact, he may not have even failed at all. Z Corp put him in a difficult position, expecting him to sign reports without the full context of the newer test results. This shows a lack of respect for the role of professional engineers and the ethical standards they are sworn to uphold. Meanwhile, the city of Gilbane shares that responsibility. They offered generous tax incentives to attract high-tech businesses like Z Corp, then imposed strict discharge regulations after those companies moved in. The standards were 10 times higher than federal limits. Yet the city offered no assistance in helping businesses meet them. This situation raises two fairness issues. First, is it fair for Z Corp to expect David to risk his license for the company's benefit? And second, is it fair for the city to pass unusually strict laws without offering support or cost sharing? Engineers operate within systems, and those systems can either support ethical behavior or make it much harder. And in this case, both the corporate and civic systems made ethical action more difficult, not less. So, while David is the one under the spotlight, this reminds us that ethical responsibility must be shared. This is what it means to be an ethical engineer. It's easy to fall into the mindset of checking boxes. You meet the standard, you follow the regulation, and you get the signature. But real ethical practice requires much more than that. It requires active judgment and moral courage. David's story is a warning. He followed the procedures. He filled out forms, but he knew something was wrong. And eventually, he chose to act, even though it put him at risk. What could have been done differently? For one, Z Corp could have created an open environment where engineers could speak honestly about risk without the fear of retaliation. The city could have supported companies in complying with their stricter standards. And David could have sought support from his professional society before deciding to go public. This case is a reminder that engineers are not just problem solvers. We are stewards of the public good. When safety is on the line, saying, "I follow the rules," is not enough. Ethical engineering demands that we speak up, ask the hard questions, and act before problems become disasters. It's about courage, it is about responsibility, and above all, it is about integrity. Thank you.